Welcome to Summer School, Club Fantasy's best ball podcast, streaming exclusively on YouTube. I am your host, Austin Amandolia. Before we move on, just a reminder to hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications so you know every time we go live. But first, let's introduce my co-hosts, as always, Matt Record of Club Fantasy and IDP Guys. Matt, how you doing tonight?
Doing great. It's somehow already August 6th. Like, I don't know where the time has gone, but we had real life NFL football this last week. We're going to have a whole slate of it next week, real football. So life is great.
Yeah, it was so great. I turned on the Hall of Fame game for like 3 minutes on Thursday night, and then I was like, ugh, I don't really want to watch the Cleveland Browns, and so I turned it off. But I'm excited for other teams to play this week because I am very much looking for some football. I've been watching like training camp during the day on the NFL Network. It's been real interesting. And yeah, if you're watching this episode when it drops, we're exactly a month away from the actual start of the NFL season. So I'm excited about that. But without further ado, let's get to our guest this week. This week we have Benny Israel back with us. Benny, how are you doing?
I'm good. That Thursday night snooze fest really got me excited. Not gonna lie, I'm like feeling the hottest gambler alive. I went technically 1-1, but I won the slip. I won money, so 1-0 in my book. But can't say how excited I am for the season. So
I was gonna ask since we're a best ball show, did anybody put up some lineups up on this Thursday night Hall of Fame game?
No, just one daily lineup. I did one daily. I $5 single entry, got $10 back. So
there you go.
Can't ask for much more.
Yeah, I typically only go for things I can actually watch, and I was watching a musical at the time, so it's like I'll let this one slide.
Yeah, there you go. The preseason, that's where it gets really, really tough during the preseason. It's like, who is going to start and who is going to have the fourth quarter breakout that no one is predicting. But we have a great show on our hands tonight. Before we get into our content, I do want to plug our Women of Fantasy Football Month because it's August, and every August at Club Fantasy, we dedicate as much as we can to women of fantasy football. You can follow Women of Fantasy Football at women_FF on Twitter. And I did that by memory. So you should be applauding me right now. The women will be taking over our Wednesday night show, no pun intended. And every week we'll have Kelly Singh and Brent Flynn interviewing somebody else from the sports world, a woman in the sports world. And this Wednesday is so exciting because they will be interviewing Amy Trask, CBS sports analyst and former CEO of the Las Vegas Raiders. Like when I learned that they landed that interview, I was like, I don't know how y'all know these people and how you do this, but y'all shoot your shot and you get some great guests in. Additionally, because it's Women of Fantasy Football Month, we're doing all sorts of raffles throughout the month. If you go and you buy a ticket for these raffles, all the proceeds go to Galvanize, which provide trainings and professional development support for women who are wanting to begin or advance their careers in the sports journalism industry. And you get an opportunity for some signed jerseys. This week, we are giving away a Jonathan Taylor jersey and a Nick Chubb signed jersey. So if you leave this podcast right now to go sign up for that raffle, just come back. But I understand it and I really get it.
We'll allow it. Yeah, it's for a good cause. So you can go ahead and do that. We'll be here. You can just pause us. We'll be right here.
We'll be right here. But do come back because we are going to talking about tournament strategies tonight. And we're specifically talking about how we're going to attack each position within a tournament. So if you go back to some of our former episodes, we kind of just gave like our basics of doing best ball tournaments, thinking through the prize structure, the number of contestants in the contest, and how to kind of go about your lineup that way, correlating week 17, all of these key things. Go check out our previous episodes on that. But tonight we're going through each of the 4 positions because we're being biased and we're just looking at the main fantasy football positions and not talking IDP tonight. And we're going to just talk about strategy on drafting each of those positions in tournaments. Reminder, if you send in questions in the chat or in the comments, we will get to them in upcoming episodes. But without further ado, we're going to get into our discussions tonight. So we're starting with quarterbacks. First question we have, how many quarterbacks are you taking? And I want to talk a little bit about where you're drafting them. Are you getting your quarterbacks early? Are you waiting, doing a little bit of both? Matt, let's start with you.
Yeah, so for me, it's very much dependent on how the board sort of falls to me, right? So I do like to get one of the, I would consider them tier one quarterbacks if I can. So like one of the top 5 guys, which typically means I'm taking a quarterback sometime in the first couple rounds, right? Like this is what it is. They're a hot commodity. From there, like I never go with more than 3 because you kind of have to draft assuming that you know what you're doing. So when you draft one of those top 5 guys, you're expecting them to be a top 5 guy. So anyone after that, like you're really only drafting a QB for that bye week or, the occasional time where they're better than them. Or, insurance for an injury. But as we've talked about in the past, when an injury happens, in one of these tournaments, you're already kind of done for. Like there's not much you can do about it, right? You can't just pick someone else up. So I like to try to get a QB early so I can kind of fade the position for a while, and then try to get someone mid-round, top 20 guy. And then I'll usually take a flyer on one of those really low-rated people at the end because I am, like we've talked about a million times, I'm the most conservative best ball player there is. So I like having that third person there. Just helps me sleep at night. So I'll target someone sort of towards the end that is a starter presently.
Yeah, I love it. Benny, what about you? How are you doing attacking the quarterback position?
Matt said it perfectly. I'm definitely a 2 to 3 guy. So whenever I take an early quarterback, there's almost a 0% chance, unless I auto pick, that I'm stopping at 2, and it'll typically be like around 10 or later quarterback to pair with the elite quarterback. Looking at my exposure, I took a pretty deep dive to prep for this show on my exposure. A lot of my top exposed guys are round 9 or later. So typically, if I'm getting someone at that round and later, I'll go to 3 just because you never know with them, and the cost is so low that the upside can really catch you up to the elite starters.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. Of like that's often how I approach it as well. Of like depending on where I take my first quarterback, it often dictates how many quarterbacks I will be taking after that. So if I'm taking a Josh Allen or a Jalen Hurts or Patrick Mahomes, I'm almost always going 2 quarterbacks in that, and I'm really just finding a quarterback to fill in on the bye week for one of those players. Rarely will I pick a third quarterback. Usually it's because I made a mistake or maybe I'm trying to do a stack, but sometimes, it just happens. You pick that third quarterback and like, why did I do that? I had Josh Allen. What was the point? But I'm with you, Benny. Whenever I have a guy like a Dak Prescott as my first quarterback, then I start to feel more like maybe I need a third. He gets hurt a lot. Let's do it. Now, all right, you taking 4 quarterbacks ever?
I don't
know.
Go ahead, Benny.
Seeing both knows. Benny.
Yeah, I wouldn't really recommend that. With past advance rates and all the stats that we have out now, you don't want to put too much into like a onesie position where you're only starting 1 week.
Yeah, I don't really see a world where it's worth doing that, right? Like unless you completely punted and you're going with like 4 of like the bottom 10 guys, right? You're just like, heck it, I'm just gonna wait and just do that and just hope it works out. Which I say that is like, oh, that could be an interesting, thought exercise, but no, you shouldn't do that.
Would you do it in weekly winners? Now, if you have not been on Underdog recently, they have a new format called Weekly Winners where you draft your lineup at the beginning of the season and it's a new contest every week. And so you need to win 1 week to make money on that. It doesn't matter what season long. Are you doing anything odd like that if you're doing a format such as Weekly Winners?
I really haven't been doing too much weekly winners, but I would probably almost treat it the same where you're getting an elite guy. I would say I would be more likely to do just 1 quarterback than 4 in that format personally, but
yeah,
we'll see. I'll throw in some lineups towards the end of the month and go from there.
Yeah, I thought that'd be a fun one just to throw out there. Yeah, I agree with you, Benny. I'm thinking of if I do any weekly winners, I might go with like 1 quarterback route and maybe just do if I can get like a Lamar Jackson, Mark Andrews stack, I'm just gonna bank on that and say, all right, 1 tight end, 1 quarterback. The 2 of them are gonna pop off 1 week, and then I just fill out the rest of my lineup from there.
That was the exact stack I had in mind too when I just said
It's a
that.
perfect one. Okay, so we've talked about how we want to attack the quarterback position. So we're almost always going 2 to 3 quarterbacks. I'll say in tournaments, I do tend to go a little bit more towards 2 quarterbacks just because I think it creates opportunities to do more with the rest of your roster. And I'm trying to do this year really is I'm trying to lean more into saying these are my takes, these are my players, and be confident in it. So I had one lineup I looked at the other day where I think I took just Lamar Jackson and Jordan Love as my 2 quarterbacks. And I was like, okay, you may have gone a little far on that, Austin, but we'll go with it. I think I'm optimistic about Jordan Love this year. But so that's how we're attacking the quarterback position. But who are your favorite quarterbacks this year? We haven't talked a lot about player takes, and I wanted to get into a little bit of it in this episode. So I want to hear both of your favorite quarterbacks to target in tournaments this year. Matt, let's start with you.
Man, I love Patrick Mahomes. That kid might do something with his career.
I think he might be the most underrated quarterback in the NFL.
He might be okay. So I always think about things in terms of tiers. And I really like Justin Herbert because I see him as sort of the end of the tier 1, which means you're getting him at QB5, QB6, but still have a player that has the upside to be, very good week in, week out. So it's not a hot take to say, yeah, Justin Herbert's a good fantasy asset, right? But it's just you can fill up other spots on your roster and then have Justin Herbert fall into your lap. You know what I mean? So those are the types of players that I like to have. And very similarly, I don't want to steal anyone else's one, but Aaron Rodgers, much maligned there with the Packers, brand new offense where they've actually invested in that offense, with offensive talent. And it doesn't need, it will not take a lot for Rodgers to all of a sudden be elevated way past his ADP. So while I don't necessarily like him as a person in terms of the fantasy asset, I think people are overlooking what he can and probably will be this year with the Jets.
Yeah, I think that's a good point too. Like, I think a lot of people are just tired of Aaron Rodgers in general, which I think is probably contributing to his ADP being depressed. Like, I was just looking, I have 0% Aaron Rodgers so far this year, and I think it's because I'm just like, I don't want to pull for him.
Well, and I don't. Yeah, I was talking to my dad because Hard Knocks is coming back up, right? Because football's back, and he's like, they're gonna make me heckin' like Aaron Rodgers, won't they? Like they're gonna find a way. It's like, yeah, that's what they do.
It's incredible. But I love the Justin Herbert take. I'm with you there. He's my 3rd exposed quarterback. And I agree. Last year, we were talking about him as the QB1. Some people were making the argument for him. And now you can get him as the 5th or 6th QB overall. But Benny, let's come to you. Who's your favorite quarterbacks to be targeting this year?
So right now, recently, I've found myself taking a lot of Jared Goff. He's right in that Aaron Rodgers range as well. I really like the Lions offense. All of his pieces kind of go higher than him too. It's normally a pretty good sign. Looking at my exposures, though, I don't know how I got here, but my highest exposed is Anthony Richardson right now. So every time he goes past pick 100, even if he's my quarterback 2, maybe he can get the upside to beat out my quarterback 1 for 1 week. But I think he has the floor built in with his rushing. If he can get any semblance of passing, the ceiling's really the limit, though.
Yeah, bless you that are all taking Anthony Richardson this year. Like, I just don't have the stomach for it. I'm like,
I have no idea why people are drafting him. I'm not gonna lie. There's like all power to you. Take him. Yeah. I'll let you have him.
I think a lot of people think that way as well. So, and I mean, it's coming in just over 10%. A lot of my quarterback plays are based off the receivers I take, and Pittman's been falling, so it kind of makes sense in that aspect. I'm not too overexposed to anyone though. So
yeah, and I think that's a good point. When we're talking about quarterback strategy, like in some ways I come into a draft approaching it as like, I want to get this quarterback, but more often than not, like Benny said, I'm drafting my receivers first based on kind of like where ADP is and where my draft slot is. And then I'll let my receivers determine my quarterback. Like if I draft Tyreek Hill, I'm either drafting Tua Tagovailoa or Lamar Jackson for the week 17 correlation. And that's pretty much how it falls for me. But if you're just pinning me down and saying like, pick a quarterback to take a stance on this year, and like, I get it. I could say Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, like I'm not going to do that because that's obvious. But the quarterback I'm taking a stance on this year is Daniel Jones. This guy was a top 10 quarterback last year. He rushed for over 700 yards in his this was his first season without injury, and he got a new coach that figured out how to utilize him and how to run a freaking offense. Because if you watch the New York Giants 3 years before that, it was gross. I used to hate watching the Giants. They would get in a 2-minute drill and they would stand there for 20 seconds, just letting the time run off the clock. And I'm like, what are you doing? I know that you should be moving right now and getting the ball down the field. And I'm not paid millions of dollars to run an offense, but whatever. But Brian Dable comes in and suddenly Danny Dimes, top 10 fantasy quarterback. And he's not even going as a QB1 right now. He's going like QB 14 on Underdog. And so I love him and I am very much in on him. I drafted him. He's my second highest exposed quarterback behind Josh Allen. So I'm just going behind the quarterbacks that Brian Dable made. And we're going to stick with that. So now we're going to talk about running backs. So same set of questions. We're going to talk how many running backs you're taking and where you're taking them in your draft. Are you taking them early? Are you going 0 running back? How you're attacking it? Benny, this time, let's start with you.
So I typically stay in the 4 to 6 running back range. I've seen 7 running backs get pretty popular lately, but if you do your strategies right, where you're taking like a hero or a couple stud running backs early, you shouldn't need too many more. And in the same respect, if you're taking like 4 or 5 backups, you better hope to God one of those hit, or else you are dead in the water. So typically this year I've been going with more of a hero approach than I have in years past. I'm kind of a reformed, robust RB bro, if you want to put it that way, put it nicely. So really just 1 or 2 in the first 8 rounds, but that's where I'm targeting the next position we'll talk about. So
got it. Matt, what about you? How are you attacking running backs?
Yeah, I find you have to zig when others are zagging, or zag when others zig. And it's become very popular for 0 RB, right? In the last couple of years, people just have been obsessed with it. Like, we have to go wide receivers, running backs are trash. I like to take advantage of that and then scoop up 2 or 3 of those stud running backs to be my hero one. So maybe I'm a little more invested in running backs than Benny is. I will typically try to get 3 or 4 in those first 8 rounds. Like, really just, these are my guys that are expected to be starters, right? And then I can just hammer the next position later. So it's wide receivers. I'm telling you that now. So I typically end up with like 5 or 6 running backs. I think it just seems like a decent amount. Anything more than that isn't great, because you're putting too much contingency in there for something that probably won't end up happening. But I like to just hammer them early, because like the days of the 3 down running back that is consistently that player, it's definitely coming to an end, right? But there are still some of those guys out there. They're still there. So I try to get them and then, pepper in my variants in the wide receiver and tight end range.
Yeah, I think this is a really good point. I'm very much with y'all on I'm typically in the 5 or 6 running back range. I've been trying to do 4 running backs every now and then recently and just like sticking with it, but I haven't been able to quite get there yet. I always end up being like, oh, but there's Clyde Edwards-Helaire in the 18th round. I have to
love
take
him. Yeah.
I love him this year. Spoilers. But I think somebody could listen to this and say, okay, wait, because we're going to talk about receivers in a second. And spoiler alert, we're probably going to say you should take about 7 or 8 wide receivers. And so someone could watch this and think, wait, why are you only taking 5 running backs, but 7 receivers? And we've talked about this before in previous episodes, but we should emphasize the number of players you're starting at each position in best ball formats. Now, on Underdog, you get 1 quarterback, 2 running backs, 3 receivers, 1 tight end, and a flex position. And you may say, okay, well, that flex could be a running back or a receiver. And that's true and fair. However, wide receivers have much more upside in a 1 week sample size than running backs do. And they're more likely to hit that ceiling outcome. It's a similar concept to what we do in DFS, right? When we do these daily lineups, we're rarely building them with 3 running backs. We're more so doing our 3 receivers and then fitting another receiver in that flex because it gives us more upside. So similar concept here. We're taking as many running backs as we need to have a good lineup, but not so many that it prevents us from getting the upside at the receiver position and elsewhere where we may need a little bit more positional depth. So, Benny, we're going to come back to you on who is your favorite running back?
Well, you guys hated the Anthony Richardson take, strap in. It's Cam Akers. Cam Akers is my guy. He is the last 3-down running back you're probably going to get, him or Rashad White. Rams outlook, I know how you guys feel about it, and I know how me and the other guest, Chris, feel about the Rams, how you guys are really sticking it to them. But I think the opportunity is going to be there, and if their O-line goes from terrible to a little below average, I think there could be room where he produces.
That's a take.
Yep.
If it works, you are going to be one of the few that benefit, and you're going to be looking at the rest of us saying, hey, I made money with Cam Akers.
If you go on my Twitter profile, I have a picture of him on my heart in my banner picture. So,
well, power to you. That is not where I stand this year. Cam Akers scares me. I literally, we did a mock draft show. I think the Monday after the season ended. It might not have even been a Super Bowl was over yet. I can't remember. It was in like January or February. We did a mock draft show, and we talked about Cam Akers on that show. And I was like, he's about to be the biggest trap in fantasy football because he just finished like killing it, like top 10 running back the last 4 weeks of the season. Everyone's gonna be like, Cam Akers is back. Like we did this in whatever year it was where he came back in the postseason and then he just tanked our teams. But hey, Cam Akers, that's a nice contrarian take. I see the vision there. I don't have the chutzpah for that, but I respect it. Matt, who's your favorite running back?
Not Cam Akers, I'll tell you that much. It's an interesting question, right? But I'm gonna go with someone that I don't know. We always like to find these shiny rookies, right? Like they come out of nowhere, they do very well. Then once they do well, then all of a sudden everyone wants them to be bad. Like, well, they can't repeat that. Like they're not good anymore. Like we look at these other shiny rookies. So of course I'm talking about Dameon Pierce. It's a Dameon Pierce tweet. He's currently being ranked, running back 22. He finished top 12 last year. Nothing's changed, right? If anything, they're going to have a better passing attack in theory with CJ Stroud, and John Mechie coming back, which should open up more doorways for Pierce to succeed. So I loved him at the RB22 spot because you don't have to put a whole lot in there to get him. But he's a guy who I don't. Obviously, we're all assuming health, right? Because health, who knows? But like I don't see, replacing what Devin Singletary. Or he's now there. He took away Rex Burkhead's spot. It's like, no, it's still Pierce's backfield, right? He's going to be very good. He's going to have the opportunity to very much succeed there. So at the RB22 spot, give me Pierce all day.
Yeah, that's a really good one. I definitely think Dameon Pierce has been one that has fallen further down the draft boards than I was expecting. See, Matt and I are on the same page here. Benny, we need to work on our telepathy here a little bit.
That's what I'm here for.
Oh, I foreshadowing to tight end. I don't think we're going to be on the same page.
Oh God. I don't. Okay, I'm not even going
to.
I'm not going to stress.
They all know.
So my favorite running back is, I have a lot. Clyde Edwards-Helaire. I really like. He's free right now, so I'm a big fan of him because he was doing well when he was starting. But the one I'm selecting for this is David Montgomery. My guy has finished as a top 10 running back on multiple occasions, has been a top 10 running back over spans of time when he's been healthy multiple times. And he's going as RB23 right now. He is healthy. He is taking the Jamal Williams role, even though it won't be exactly the Jamal Williams role because teams change from year to year, caveats. But the point being, he's a better player than Jamal Williams, and Jamal Williams freaking ate in that offense last year. This is going to be the best offensive line that David Montgomery is, and people seem to forget this guy can catch passes. He can. He does it pretty well. Like, I know Jahmyr Gibbs is a nice shiny object rookie, like Matt was just referencing, and he's going to be a great slot receiver, but he's not going to get the goal line touches. It's going to be David Montgomery. So I'm in on him this year, particularly on Underdog, where touchdowns are so important. Okay, we've kind of spoiled this next one a little bit, are alluding it to already, but we're going to get to wide receivers. So same deal. How many taken? Where are you drafting them? Matt, we're going to start with you this time.
Yeah, this is sort of where at least I fill in most of my roster, right? So we're talking, I mean, anywhere from 7 to 9 to 10, depending on how things else, sort of go. And I'm taking them. I mean, I already alluded to it. I like taking some of those stud running backs while they are falling, while other people are grabbing these stud wide receivers, and then just hammering those mid range wide receivers. So a lot of those people that you'd probably rank between like 8 and 30, like give me four or five of those, right? And the expected average output of that should make me look just fine, assuming my running backs can outplay everyone else.
Yeah, I think that's really good. Benny, what about you? How are you attacking this position?
I'm right there with Matt. I typically go with 7 to 9. That's just how it normally works out. Definitely 8, like right in the middle is where I really live on most of my lineups. So that would be like, if you're doing one best ball draft, probably try to get 7 or 8 receivers. I really like I like attacking receivers, getting 4 by round 8. And then that way my dart throws later can be a little more unique, like attacking uncertain situations, like roles that are really up for grabs, kind of like the Bills slot receiver outside of Dalton Kincaid, I guess. Who's that going to be? Hardy, Shakir. I tend to sprinkle a couple of those guys in every lineup I do. So.
Yeah, I think that's good. And like you think of it, if you're attacking a team like Buffalo is a good example. Kansas City's another good example. If you're trying to find players that they're going to have 2 or 3 weeks here and there where they're going to be the number one on that team. Like I loved attacking the Kansas City receivers late in drafts because 1 week it's going to be Sky Moore, 1 week it's going to be Marquez Valdes-Scantling. 1 week it probably will be Rashee Rice, even though I'm not a big fan of him, taking him too early in drafts this year. And then, they'll throw in some Justin Watson. He's gonna score like a 40-yard touchdown at some point. You just know it's gonna happen. You don't know when it's gonna happen, but that's the beauty of best ball. I'm attacking it similarly. The one thing that I would just flag about wide receivers, and this is like getting back to the ADP point, is they are flying off the board this year much more quickly than they have been. I think it's starting to normalize a little bit now that we're getting closer to the regular season and we're getting more people who haven't been drafting all off season. Like typically the people drafting in May and June, they're like us, they obsess over this, they get really in the weeds. And so they're drafting early and they set a lot of the early ADP. But as more fans looking to have fun, and they need a break from football, unlike us, there as they start to come into it, ADP starts to shift. But the first 30 running backs come off the board at the same point that the first 45 receivers do. And so you can see just from that vantage point right there that the depth of these positions is very vastly different in respect to their ADPs. And so I like to also get a few of my receivers early. Like I'm trying to get like at least 2 or 3 by the 5th round, because then I know I'm going to have like 3 solid receivers in those 3 starting spots at the gate. But it often depends on how the board falls and kind of like where my draft slot is in ADP. Like I'm often staying pretty close to ADP as I'm moving through these positions. But now it's time to make some enemies. So who's your favorite wide receiver? We're getting back to this. And Matt, let's start with you. Who's your favorite wide receiver this year?
Yeah, it's kind of related to that QB I like, who I don't like, but I like from a fantasy purpose. Like it's Allen Lazard. Like he had a sneaky, really good year last year there with the Packers, and yeah, he followed, or maybe he was there first for, I don't remember the actual order of operations, but he's there with Aaron Rodgers, right? And everyone loves the the other shiny objects there, but I think Rodgers is going to pass to the person that he knows enough, and they're going to kind of open things up. That, I mean, he's being ranked mid to late 40s. Like again, it's not a whole lot of draft capital to get him, but I find in all of these drafts, towards the late where you're taking those flyers, like give me the person in the same way. Jacoby Myers, he's another one of my guys, spinning that same build there. With Jimmy Garoppolo throwing it to him, it's like, oh, of course Devontae Adams is going to dominate the touches. Coincidence, those were 2 former Green Bay Packers, of course. But it's like, no, give me the dependable guy that Jimmy Garoppolo doesn't have to throw deep. He can just the safety net, just go right at them. So I like targeting them later in drafts.
Yeah, what I am learning from this show right now is that Matt and Benny are going to bury me in tournaments because they are more willing to take these players that I'm like, I can tell a story, but I don't want to tell that story of how they get there. And like Alan Lazard is one of those players where I'm like, I know for some reason Aaron Rodgers is into him and wanted him on his team. And that should tell me something. But I just can't click that button for Alan Lazard because I'm like, really? Garrett Wilson's right there. And I'm going to go with Alan Lazard. But hey, when he pops off for 30 points one week, because there's going to be a week where he scores 2 touchdowns, and suddenly you're going to be moving up the board in your draft and advancing in that tournament. And if it happens in week 17, so help me God, I'll quit.
Well, and the best part about it is like it doesn't take anything to get him, right? Like you're not drafting him at your like I'm expecting him to be my everyday starter. It's like no, he just needs that 1 week, right? Like he just needs that 1 or 2 weeks, and you're good.
And that's the beautiful thing about best ball. Like once you get past like round 12, like you're taking dart throws anyway. So like why not take dart throws that have the high upside? Benny, it's got to be better than Cam Akers. Who's your favorite wide receiver?
I mean, he's not a dynasty darling. Well, there's 2 sides to this player. So I like Quentin Johnston where he's going in drafts. I like that Herbert's throwing to him. Going to be in their 3 wide receiver sets right away. They don't have like the strongest tight end in Everett. And Keenan Allen and Mike Williams, if I had to bet on 2 players, I don't do that. I don't bet on injury, but they have not stayed healthy like ever. So there's a chance for him to move up on the depth chart too.
Is there a group chat that I'm not in where you are all like colluding together? Like which players can we bring up to Austin that are just going to annoy him more than anything? Like Quentin Johnston, there's been a running bit about how I'm just so much lower on him. I have him ranked at like wide receiver 59 this year because I'm just like, I'm out on Quentin Johnston. But again, I could tell the story of how he gets there. Like Benny, like that is an incredibly logical reason to love Quentin Johnston because I agree. Every time I draft Keenan Allen and Mike Williams, and unfortunately, I've drafted Keenan Allen a lot, I'm nervous because I don't know that they're going to make it 17 games, and I'm just banking on the games that I'm going to have them. And when they're off the field, Quentin Johnston's probably going to be just fine. That's the hope. So for my wide receiver, I'm kind of going with the low-hanging fruit here. I'm going Chris Olave. This guy was on pace to be the offensive rookie of the year last year, and he got overtaken because he had some injuries and he had a very awful quarterback situation. And Garrett Wilson had a bad quarterback situation as well, but he became the eventual offensive rookie of the year. And I think people forget, like in a lot of these, for a lot of the season, Chris Olave was the best rookie receiver, and him and Garrett Wilson had very comparable seasons. And right now you can get Olave more than 4 spots, but he's going 4 receivers after Garrett Wilson by ADP. Garrett Wilson's currently wide receiver 8, Chris Olave's wide receiver 12. And I'm like, yeah, I can tell myself enough stories about how Sean Payton has a point and New York Jets are focusing a little bit too much on the media coverage of Aaron Rodgers and a little bit not as much on getting this team on the field. And I can tell myself enough of that story that I'm like, yeah, I'll take Olave. Like Derek Carr, he just got Devontae Adams to a 1,500-yard season, got him his most targets he's ever had in a season. So he could probably do that for Chris Olave. I feel good about it. So I'm just going to take the low-hanging fruit here. Quentin Johnston. That one's sticking with me. It's going to make me draft him now. Like my next best spot, I'm going to be like, all right, Benny said it. I'm going to take Quentin Johnston. Moving on to tight ends, and I'm already nervous because Matt's alluding to a player I'm not going to like here. Okay, so how many are you taking? Where are you drafting them? Same question as always. Benny, we're going to start with you here.
This is another onesie position where you're starting one of them. So two or 3 typically does it. Kind of the same principle as the quarterbacks for me. If I'm taking one early, 100% chance unless I auto pick, I'm taking 2. But I really do like playing the dart throw type of game, like towards the end of drafts where you really don't pick one until around like 14 on. Just aim for upside and a hopeful roll.
Yeah, I'm a fan of that. Matt, what about you?
Yeah, I often find I end up taking like 3 or 4 of them because I find towards like the very end, talking about dart throws of drafts, you get some random wide receivers and some random tight ends, right? And especially in the best ball format, like you really are just trying to play the touchdown upside, right? And at a certain point, it's like, you know what? Yeah, I like Isaiah Likely more than that random Giants receiver. Like there's a chance that, Mark Andrews gets hurt and then all of a sudden he gets skyrocketed up, but also there's a chance he scores a couple touchdowns. So I end up finding towards the end, I end up with 3 or 4. When possible, it's all that tiered stuff again. Like I like getting one of those top guys and then sort of peppering it in sort of later as the sort of draft sort of falls. If I can't obviously get one of the top guys, then you go for more of the 2 or 3 in the middle there before the end. But ideally, I'm getting one of the top 5.
Yeah, and just to reiterate, because we just assumed that you're not taking one quarterback or one tight end, but let's just quickly emphasize, don't take just one quarterback or one tight end because you need someone for the bye week fill-in. I'm with y'all. So Benny, you said you typically, if you're going 3 tight ends, sometimes you'll just wait till around 14ish to start those start throws. Matt, what about you? If you're kind of punting the tight end position, how late will you wait before you start taking those dart throws at tight end?
Yeah, I mean, about round 10 is usually when I get that itch. It's very much dependent on who's available, because again, I keep talking about these tiers. I think it's very important, right? There's sort of the top tier of people, and then you don't want to. I don't want to leave without a tier 2, at least a tier 2 option, which typically you can get some of these guys. When I say tier 2, like some that can finish top 10. You get people you feel more confident in being top 5, but I need a top 10 tight end. So I will not wait any later than round 10.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I will, if I don't get one of the elite tight ends early, I'll do the same thing where I'll wait. I think I'll usually wait until about where you are, Matt, around 10 to 12. Sometimes I'll wait a little bit later just because, like you both said, there are so many tight ends in these late rounds that you can just take dart throws on that I'm like, I know they're going to score a touchdown here and there. And I'm good with it. Like Hunter Henry, I mean, his ADP is atrocious right now. And I think people are just thinking oh, the Patriots offense was awful last year. They're going to be awful again. I'm like, no, I feel better about them this year. They got a new offensive coordinator. He's still a tight end target or a red zone target. I think his ADP is way too low. So we're going to continue to delay Matt breaking my heart with whatever tight end he has to talk about and come to you, Benny. Benny, who's your favorite tight end not named Travis Kelce? We're making that a rule. You can't name Travis Kelce because it's too obvious.
Right. Thank you for clarifying. No, early round, Mark Andrews. I think people are kind of overthinking it. We were kind of a year early on his round 2 ADP, but I think that he's going to lead the team in targets pretty much every receiving stat you could think of. Lamar Jackson loves him. But for late round guy, Furgeson for the Cowboys.
Nice.
So they replaced him with Dalton Schultz with a rookie. I'll put quotes on that because the rookie has not practiced yet. So I think it's going to be the Fergie show. So.
Yeah, and Mike McCarthy likes to run the ball, which means you need to have a tight end on the field. Yeah. And if Jake Ferguson's going to be there, he could slip out into the end zone a time or two. I actually like that one. I've grown on some Jake Ferguson here recently. I drafted him once, and I'm proud of that. All right, Matt, break my heart. Who's your favorite tight end, and why is it Kyle Pitts?
What if I told? Oh, it's not Kyle Pitts. It's not. But what if I told you can get the tight end that finished as tight end 8 last year off the board at tight end 15? That seems like a pretty good return on investment, right? With a quarterback that we expect to take leaps throwing, with a new wide receiver in that offense that's going to take attention away from this tight end. That seems like a pretty good deal, right?
I'm nervous.
Yeah, nods of appreciation. It's Cole Kmet. This is a Cole Kmet tweet. Everyone hates him, and I don't understand it. He started off really slow last year, and then all he did was produce, and it takes nothing to get him, right? I expect the Bears offense to be better than it was. And again, he finished this in PPR, full PPR, tight end 8 last year, and people are talking about him like he's trash. The Bears just gave him a bunch of money, right? He's now a top 10 paid tight end, so they see him as part of that team, part of their future. And again, it doesn't cost nearly anything to get him. So when you're talking punting, right? Like punting the position, like, yeah, give me a Kmet every day.
All I've got to say is he didn't score double-digit points until like week 10 last year. That's it.
But in best ball, that's fine because you're going to layer him in with something else.
God, give me to my redraft show where I can just shit on Cole Kmet all the time.
We're talking
I like the Kmet take. I'm invested in him too, Matt.
I think, have I drafted him out of principle? Dang, I did. I drafted him once. So he's in the Jake Furgeson tier for me.
I will say to your previous point, like, I will die before I give up on Kyle Pitts. Like, I will die. Like,
I'm glad you mentioned that.
Yeah,
because my favorite tight end this year is Kyle Pitts.
There you go.
He's my number one exposed tight end. Only ahead of I don't know how I did this. Somehow my number 2 is Tyler Higbee. my number 3 is Chick Okonkwo. I know it's funny because I'm not even that excited about Chick, but I'm in on Kyle Pitts this year. Y'all, last year was the outlier. He got hurt in week 10, so you didn't get a full season from him. Also, I know people have started coming out lately and chirping back and saying, yeah, Desmond Ridder was as inaccurate as Marcus Mariota was. Yeah, that's fine. But if you're throwing the ball more, it still is okay, right? Like, if we're getting more volume overall, you can still be inaccurate and there be more targets for Kyle Pitts. Also, he had 4 starts. That is not a large sample size. I think he's going to be more accurate. People are talking him up in camp, and he's going to get this ball to Kyle Pitts. Also, it's not that hard to get the ball to Kyle Pitts, particularly downfield, but Marcus Mariota just couldn't do it. It's fine. I love him, but Desmond Ridder is going to be our guy to get Kyle Pitts back relevant. And this offense is just going to be so much fun to watch. Just don't overthink it. Don't, like last year, wipe that away. They ran the ball because they had to, right? That's what people do when their offense is bad. They run the ball and they're like, you know what? We're going to slow this thing down. It's not going to be bad this year. It's going to be good. We got 3 elite offensive players. They're going to spread the field. We have Jonnu Smith, who does stuff with Arthur Smith, which is great. I think this is going to be a great offense. One of the best O-lines in the league. Take Kyle Pitts and don't sweat about it. It's going to be great.
I'm right there with you, and it's it's a problem, right? Because like one of these years we're going to be right, and he's going to be worth it, right? Right,
but if you're taking Kyle Pitts, just a reminder, like, don't take Dalton Kincaid. That's my one reminder for everyone. Don't do Dalton Kincaid. Don't fall into the trap. Maybe take him once. I don't think I've taken him once, but don't fall into the trap.
Yeah, and while we're talking about those type of players, I really like Trey McBride too. There over in Arizona,
that's a good one.
He flourished when Zach Ertz went out. Also, congratulations, his lovely wife retiring from the U.S. women's team. What a disaster that was, Julie Ertz. But no, he really flourished when Ertz got hurt. We don't know if he's going to be fully healthy, to coming back. McBride was very highly rated coming out of college, right? They're going to get him the ball. That team's going to be throwing a lot because they're going to be losing a lot. So yeah, look out for Trey McBride.
I like the Trey McBride pick. So that's going to be all for us this week, but we got a lot of announcements real quick, and we're going to try and do them all in 2 minutes. So I'm going to give Matt a chance to plug his stuff, and then Benny. Matt, what do you got to plug for us this week?
Cool. So you can find me at mrecord21 on Twitter or pretty much any social media. Over there at the IDP guys, giving you IDP content. Obviously, we focus on offensive stuff here, but I specialize in those defensive players. So come hang out, ask me any of those questions, and yeah, see me anywhere where you watch videos, basically.
Yeah, and Matt really specializes in the music.
I do sing.
It's peak experience. All right, Benny, what you got for us this week?
Yeah, you guys can find me. You guys can find me on Twitter at Benny_bestball. With the season ramping up, I'm going to be really posting a lot of my best ball exposures and going through them. And once the season starts, I go through every game every week and keep nice track of it. So we'll see how good I do this year.
I love it. I can't wait to see. You're going to get to see in real time how smart we are and why we bring like Benny on to tell you how to play best ball. But before you go, don't forget, hit subscribe and turn on notifications. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Reminder that it is Women of Fantasy Football Month, that we start our 4th season of our shows this Wednesday, August 8th, where Kelly Singh and Britt Flynn will interview Amy Trask. That's right, the Amy Trask, CBS sports analyst and former CEO of the Las Vegas Raiders. I almost said LA Raiders. That would have been awkward, Las Vegas Raiders. And don't forget, we'll be announcing the winners of our raffle for a signed Jonathan Taylor jersey or a signed Nick Chubb jersey. Link to enter the raffle is going to be in the chat, and all raffle entries will benefit Galvanize, which provides workshops, trainings, and more to support women looking to begin or advance their careers in sports journalism. You don't want to miss this opportunity. All of our shows are going live all the time. We've got Dynasty After Party aired yesterday. This morning we had our Mock It Like It's Hot show. Tomorrow we have our next edition of Her Story in the Making with Britt Flynn. Tomorrow night we have Kelly Singh and Adam Hollis bringing you another episode of Who's Your Caddy, our DFS Cough show. And then Wednesday night, again, Women of Fantasy Football Season 4. We also have the Sneaky Flex girls back. So great, so cute. And we've got a new show called, I believe, Don't Get Too Cute with It, where our buddy Zach brings his daughter on and they just talk fantasy football for a few minutes. So get a look at that. We have finished covering all 32 teams in our articles. You can catch all of those articles at clubfantasyffl.com, as well as my best ball deep dive where I cover all 16 week 17 matchups. That's a lot of content. For Matt Record at mrecord21 and Benny Israel at Benny_bestball. I'm Austin Amendolia at Austin_FFL on Twitter. We're not calling it X, it's Twitter. This has been Summer School, and until next time, remember, defense wins championships, offense wins fantasy football, and best ball wins money. We'll see you next time.